All right, so I'm Will Larche. I'm the Flutter engineering lead in material design here at Google. I'm going to put my notifications on mute. I can't believe that sound even comes through with this thing. I really missed the real escape button. Anyway, I'm here this week because I'm onboarding our new team based here in Munich, the Material Flutter team. They're sitting back there, Tian Guang, Pa, Jose, and Pierre was here. He may still be here somewhere. It's really exciting to be in Munich. Google is really invested in Munich in this office, and Google is really invested in Flutter and in material design, so it just made sense for us to have a presence here too. But this does mean that hopefully I'll get to visit you more often, and hopefully we'll be seeing you more often at these meetups. If you don't know what that literally means, it's the material components for Flutter library, also known as just importing material.dart. And first, I want to say a big thank you to Vince and everyone from the Flutter Munich meetup that put this together today. It's a lot of work, and it's further proof that we have the best community in Flutter. I've said it before, I'll say it again, because it's still true. Very kind, very generous, and we're very grateful. And yes. And I added this slide because I saw those talks. I was taking notes the whole time. Very, very impressive. You built a database for Flutter in like 3 months. I couldn't do it in all the time in the world, probably. I'm the pretty buttons guy. And then here you are bringing in a ton of information, even asking about CI stuff, and then the other guys building, bringing CI solutions to you. It's all very exciting, and I'm going to be bringing back all the feedback that we get from the talks and from the questions that you'll have when I give time for questions back to the main team in Mountain View and in New York, where we'll try our best to digest it and give you the things that you're most interested in. Now, this is passive aggressive. I'm saying thank you for your patience as I present a presentation that I'm still working on and still iterating on in preparation for some talks probably in the spring. It's a work in progress. What we'll be going through is some different techniques for getting custom UI in Flutter. The first one being customizing material, then building your own widgets, and then custom painting. So to make a definition, what is custom UI? It is unfortunately something that's not well defined. But for our purposes, we'll say that it's when you're trying to do things that are non-material or non-Cupertino, because there are libraries that already do those things for you easily by default. So I've gone shopping through a few apps to see some examples of pieces of them that are custom. This is from CoStar. CoStar is a horoscope app that's becoming very popular with millennials who have, well, I mean, we have no money and no direction. Maybe we'll look to the stars. So this is one. It's really great. Here's a video of it in action. Look at the page control at the top, and it's awesome custom animation. Maybe you can't easily see it, but it's gooey and it goes and it grabs the next one. That's certainly custom. Something as simple as a calculator or money entering app. That's not built out of, that does not look like a series of material buttons and a regular material headline. It's very simple, but this is custom UI. I come from iOS. I use an Apple phone. And the control center, while it could be made and composed of some material or Cupertino widgets, each of those things, when you tap on them for a long time, like expands into this larger thing and shows a whole other menu. This is very custom UI too. And in iOS 12 and earlier, I think like 12 through 10 or 11, there was this really cool knob that you would turn for saying what time you wanted to wake up, where I could turn that the orange and yellow part, and it would all turn with it. So making a control that's a new idea, that's very custom. And probably also graphs, when you get down to it, could be considered custom UI, even though there are usually libraries to help people with it. Are there libraries for graphs in Flutter? Yes? What are they called? What's the big one?
I think Google has their own graph.
We have one. Great. Good job. Good job, us. There's a lot of Flutter out there. Graphs are incredibly difficult, so I bet that's someone's full-time job. Here's a weather app. This is custom UI. It's a custom dense presentation of information, both vertical and horizontal. This is an app that lets you try on nail polish in AR. I'm hiding my fingers because it did not work. I'm sorry, the color didn't work with me. The app worked perfectly fine. But camera UIs are a kind of custom UI too. This one's still loading. Yeah, this is Hinge. Will it just go? I make it go? Oh. Well, that's Hinge, which is a dating app that's really popular right now back home. And it has an onboarding flow. It has another custom page control at the top. It's actually a stepper on its side, and it does really cool animations, and the entire app is very forward-thinking in design and is bringing things to a really cool place. It's got pill buttons. Pill buttons are very hot right now. And then it's got a fab at the bottom for navigation, which is kind of original. So now that you know what I'm talking about, here are some of the techniques that I recommend for this. The first one being the simplest. Start high. You've probably seen the graphic that we have on our website and a lot of talks where we explain different layers and how they build upon each other. Material being the top, then the widgets layer, then the rendering layer, and the engine, and so forth, and stuff like that. The material layer is at the top, and it gets the goodness of all the things underneath it and composes them into a simple-to-use API that has opinions in order to give you good defaults. And this is, as with many things, the easiest place to start. It's like how if you want to do an app on mobile, I mean, like, why are you using Flutter? Just go use OpenGL, right? No. You're going to use something high level so that you can have a good time customizing material. There is we have a reputation that material design is a kind of handcuffs, and we're trying to get across the idea that we are not anymore. We really have expanded and become much more flexible and customizable in material. So we do offer some guardrails, which are there to give you suggestions and to help you from doing things that our research shows can lead to a bad user experience. When you use material components for any library, and we have them for iOS, Android, web, and Polymer, Angular, it comes with some guardrails that we put in there to try to suggest that you stay within these certain lines. But our motto now is to be as flexible as possible and to have a wide and open API. Flutter's original material components library was created by this guy that I'm a total fan of. He did it by himself in record time, which isn't that like the Flutter story, right? And it was based on our earlier material guidelines that were very much like, you can't change this color, you can't change that font, everything has to be like this. And we've been slowly updating them over time to not only take in the new styles that material accepts, but whatever ideas that you have too. So hopefully material does whatever it needs for you, and if it doesn't, please let us know on GitHub. So for all intents and purposes, material is the default UI library on Flutter. It's really the primitives for making UI in a lot of ways. Looking back at this app, CoStar, even though some of it is really custom, if you look at it a different way, you can find a lot of material components that are just customized here. Right? Yeah. So it's pretty much got a traditional app bar. It's got tabs underneath it that have their own selection indicator. And then these things, and there's more of them that you would see if it was scrolling, in a way are cards where the elevation is expressed through outline. So that's a cool concept that we don't talk about much in material design, but instead of having a shadow, you can have an outline. And then it's the same as if something were resting right on a surface. You can think of, and in Flutter, if you use a zero elevation in a lot of places, you will get a hairline around it. Because if you put something on the surface, it still has the faintest, anything 3D is going to have the faintest shadow there. So having no elevation is different than having an elevation of 0. Nope, don't have one. That's where it will go, though. That's where it's going to go. That's where the demo is going to go. All right, so the second technique that we recommend is composing custom widgets. Material widgets aren't exactly doing it for you. You have needs, and you can't figure out with the APIs how to make it behave or look the way you want it to. You can make your own widgets. So this is a very good example of it, where in many ways, they have some things going on in them that are composable. Like if you look at the top two, they're a collection of other widgets. So you could go about custom painting that all by yourself, all those circles, and then how they behave. But it might be easier to create a reusable piece that's then composed that way. Another example, this is from the talk that I did at I/O this year, on having adaptive layout. These two should be or could be the same class, the same widget, just behaving two different ways, because maybe one's being shown on a smaller screen and one's being shown on a larger screen. They're both composed of the same things. A couple pieces of text stacked against a scrim and a photo. That's just some different parameters that are set depending on which case that we're in. A really good example, if you wanted to see not how we compose widgets when we're making them in Material, because Material is made up of composing things from the widget layer and the material layer, is this one that we have called Larche. And this is just something I wanted to point out if you wanted to look at how we do it. So this is in the, it's a stateful component. This is the build method of the state. It's a very complex one. One of the funny things about chips is they're just little pills and they nearly kill us. They are the hardest component for its size. It's nuts. Designers want to do everything, and so we make it do everything. So it's the most important thing that you'll notice here is it's a piece of material. I don't know if you've run into this class, but it's the idea of, originally Material was inspired by actual paper and how things interact with each other in layers. So you can think of the Material class as a piece of paper that you can then shape, mold, and add onto in whichever ways you need to. This one has an ink splash on it, that ripple that comes out when you touch it. So its child is that. It has animations built into it. It has some custom rendering and theming and stuff like that. But if you look under the hood, it's not actually very long of a build method when you get down to it. It's very complicated because of the number of inputs that go into it. But starting with Material, you get a lot of things for free, and the system knows how to deal with it in a lot of ways. So I firmly believe that if you need inspiration on how to build things, look for simple explanations online in code labs and in talks and in blog posts and stuff like that. But then also look into our own library and say, like, how did they even build button? Let me go look at button. How are they building text fields? Let me look at text fields. And don't be intimidated by the amount of parameters that are in there or how formatted it is and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we're still just putting together the same pieces that you are. So hopefully in addition to being a UI library for building things, we can be a reference as well. So custom drawing. You aren't able to get everything done that you wanted to by composing existing widgets or customizing Material. You have some other need. So when we built the range slider, Anthony, who's on my team back in New York, it's got a lot of custom stuff going on there. I mean, I don't know what widgets we could compose that already existed to make it do this. Those knobs are not buttons. We don't have a line widget. All of this needed to be custom painted. And so if you want to see an example of really sophisticated drawing, you can look inside his class. But when you get down to it, the API that's available for you for custom drawing that makes the most sense and is the most user-friendly is the custom paint widget. This is your friend. It uses custom painters. These are classes that you implement. And there's more than other ones. So first the painter comes in, that's the name of the field. It will paint, and then it will ask its children to paint. And then you have this great thing, the foreground painter, where you can paint again. So if everything is done layer by layer, additively, the foreground painter can add a sheen on top of everything if you wanted to, or put a scrim against it. Here's how you would make one. you use a custom paint widget, you pass in the painter, and that's my painter. I've implemented it in another file, I've created a painter. My foreground painter is another class that I've made, and then child, whatever the children will end up being. I already mentioned that. So custom painter, as opposed to custom paint, right? Am I getting that right? Yeah, so unfortunate naming. Custom paint is the widget. Custom painter is the painter. It's an abstract class. You must subclass it. You have to implement all of it. It's just, it's just an API. And these two methods are the two that you must override. You must override paint, and you must override should repaint. And so when I was learning these, I noticed that there was a lot of, there have been alarms going off, and I was literally just making sure that we didn't have to leave. I had to leave the building the other day with a large group of people. Not here, back home. New York is loud. I noticed that there were a lot of similarities between what we do in a custom painter and in things that I already knew. And so I could make some parallels that helped me move a little bit faster in there. I come from iOS, so I understand core graphics and core animation and how do you make UI Bezier paths. Some other people come from HTML5 with its canvas. It's a very similar API to that. So here's a paint. So in the paint method, the canvas takes drawing calls. Like you say, I want to draw a rectangle, I want to draw an oval, I want to draw a path. And like I said, they're additive on top of each other. So once I put shadow at the end, which meant a shadow was painted on top of everything, did not look right. Now I know what a shadow looks like under the hood. It's got a weird inside. You want to do shadow first and then paint your rect and stuff like that. So all your draw something functions, they take a paint. We've got custom paint, custom painter, and now a paint. Paints take details about your painting, like your color, whether you want it to be stroked or if you want it to be filled, and if it is stroked, what width. Then there's should repaint. This one throws a lot of people off, so we came up with what we think are some good recommendations for when to return false in should repaint and when to return true. There are some times that you can always return false. If you have a widget that's not going to change in any way, you draw it once and that's its only thing, well then you should definitely return false, and that will save a lot of time with the GPU. If it does anything, if it has inputs of any kind, it's dynamic, then return true when those inputs change. Otherwise, return false. And if it's dynamic for its whole life, such as, I don't know if you use that when you're teaching engineering here, but we always do this game of life thing where things are constantly mutating and turning into other things. It's some math thing, I don't get it. But it's changing every second or half a second. It's so dynamic that it's probably safe to return true. Check it and see, but you might be able to get away with it with no problem because it happens so often. Something that you'll have to handle if you're doing all this custom drawing, and even if you're composing your own widgets most of the time, is gesture work. Gesture works are made out of a metaphor in Flutter around the arena, which has something to do with sports. And I thought for a long time that it was just, since I don't follow sports, I didn't get it. But no, it's actually confusingly named. So I'll show you some of it. We've got a gesture arena team. And so here's creating a gesture arena team. A couple examples of it. And yeah, don't ask me details on it. Oh, so that's all I wrote? Great job, Will. So you have a team, and the idea is that they go into an arena and they have to fight with their logic, and one of them wins and says, "It's me, I will accept the gesture." So you've put in drag, you've put in tap, you've put in long press or something like that, and then even though they're all on the same team, they fight in the arena. That's the part that confused me. I was like, they should be fighting a different team. Why are they fighting with themselves? They'll never get anywhere. But there are some great articles where you can look into more detail on gestures. I'll give you a link to them there. So what I've gone through tonight very quickly is, again, customizing material, building your own widgets, and some of the details taken for painting. Hopefully at that kind of level where if you haven't done it before, you can realize you don't need to be afraid of it. That custom painting is not very hard. It looks like it is because it can involve so many method calls and so many different classes, but they're all very, very simple when you get down to it. I mean, if you're afraid of math, avoid arcs and stuff like that because, you know, 2 control points and stuff, it can be confusing. But make a whole bunch of rectangles. Make a big rainbow of rectangles inside a paint method, and then you've tried custom painting. So when a designer asks you to do it, you'll be ready. So there's this really great article, Material Range Slider in Flutter, that Anthony on my team wrote. It's on medium.com. I can't recommend it enough because it goes into a lot of detail, even more about some of the things that I've spoken about tonight, and handling gestures. If you have any real problems that you're running into where something's not working, or if you've created an app that you're particularly proud of that you want to share, please email me. This is my email address. It's just my last name at google.com. But the best place for anyone here to get advice or to get in touch with the Flutter team itself is through our Discord channel. Now, it's a little difficult to find, actually. It's flutter.dev/community. You have to scroll down on that page to the Discord tile and click that. I think they wanted to make it that, like, you had to earn it. And you may be thinking, I'm already on the Discord channel. Maybe you are, but you might be on the Flutter Dev Discord channel that is owned by the r/FlutterDev Reddit subreddit. And one of the moderators from that is on our team too, which is really cool. We just did an AMA on it. That's really fascinating if you want to read probably any question you've had about Flutter. People asked last week and you can go read. But once you're inside here, I'll just show you what it looks like, how many different rooms that we have. There are rooms for every single part of Flutter. I hang out in the design languages room because that's where my work is. There's desktop, DevRel, engine, the framework, performance, releases, tools, triage, all the things. And it is full of the people from the teams that do that. So it is full of the Flutter team there, and you can actually talk to them. That's the idea. We're trying to be as open as possible, even with communication, not just with our code. To learn more about Material, please go to material.io. I know some people don't have a lot of experience with material design. This is a fantastic website that will teach you all about material design. And now, does anyone have any questions? Yes?
One of the core concepts that Flutter introduced in the beginning is like the idea to having widgets and to having all these different compositions and like letting Flutter figuring out how to display it on different screen sizes. How does it compare to when you start using customized UI? How much do you care about different screen sizes? Like when it gets only 2 smartphones. UI web for now? For that question, is it like, do I have to care about it?
Depends on how custom you're getting. If you're starting with pieces of, like a piece of material and working with things, you're still going to get a lot of things for free. But more than anything, that's a question between you and your designer to say, like, how should this look in this different form factor? And it can be difficult because you can think like it just should be bigger, but there are probably breakpoints at which point different things need to behave in different ways. In the talk that we have at I/O, we kind of explore, well, we go beyond just the 2 form factors of a phone into all the other ones. But a lot of that is going to be your responsibility in a good way because you should be making bold choices about it.
So it's like behaving the same as I have like Cupertino and Material that just make some, like on that screen size, then the painter should like paint things like it that way. Or how did it going to make it?
We are working on real recommendations for best practices on that. But one of the things that we're also doing is watching the community to see how you are all implementing it and what things go well and not. I was speaking with someone tonight about state management and whether Block was working for them and what other packages they were using to do it. This is the kind of stuff that we need right now because we create Flutter more than we are building products with it. You're the ones building products with it, which means that you learn things really out in the wild that we need to know. So creating breakpoints that you can then pass down, you can either read them from the media query if you wanted to, and of course anything that, where media query is the parent of it will get rebuilt, which is a kind of, if the media query changes, it's a good little detail, and nothing else will. If you wrap something in a media query, it's just efficient when you put it in a tree of knowing which things need to be rebuilt and which ones don't. That is the way that I've done it in my experiments. And I would love to hear how it went for you. email me.
Yeah.
Yeah, after you try it. And then hopefully, I mean, Flutter is too new for anyone to be too didactic about it. There's not really a dogma around Flutter except compose and be reactive and use statefulness when you can. But over time, those things will develop, and you trying it out and letting us know what works, it will be a part of deciding what that is. Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, about the custom paint
Yes.
class. Since the children are also painters,
Yes. Well, I mean, they
Why?
can be painters. Your
Okay.
children can be anything, any widget.
but why do you have a foreground painter then? Because if I just put the last child as a painter,
The foreground painter is optional. I bring it up because it's, to me, a great perk. After I've made something and I've painted it and I've added in pieces of text, which is something that you really don't want to draw yourself, you want to use the goodness of our text library, you may then want to put something on top of it. A lot of times in design, especially in iOS, there can be a sheen on top of something, or there can be a gradient that goes across it, or even just a filter in some ways. There's just lots of cool things that you can do where you're really stacking these things, but you need your children to draw first.
but if the children are stacked already, so the last child could replace the foreground painter.
No, it will
No?
finish with the children and then go back up through the foreground painters. So it's recursive.
Ah, so the children go down? And
Yes,
then
it'll
back
go.
on top? Okay, good.
Yeah. That's the technical term. Are there any other questions? Has anyone here done any custom painting in Flutter yet? What are you painting?
Or just some custom boxes for a chat app
Yeah?
with some fancy borders.
And so, oh, it was the borders that got
Yeah.
you, and that's why you needed to do it.
Yes. So I just painted the borders of the box on my own. But basically it was easy. It's like the HTML canvas. You get the canvas size, you use your painter, paint your box borders, and you're done.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
building something the other day where I was using custom painter, and then I was really happy that there was hit zone detection built in there too if you want to use it. So these things can be interactive. You can say, this, I've drawn a whole big thing, but this is the area that's touchable and none of the rest of it is. But I'm here to take questions even just about Flutter itself. Ah, yes.
I'm interested, just out of curiosity and academia or whatever you call it, how deep the rabbit hole goes with custom painting. So can you, in performance sense, it doesn't make, performance-wise it doesn't make sense probably, but can you access the pixel level? Somehow can you define your own convolutional filters or something? So the painting is done natively, as I understand. I'm totally new to Flutter, by the way.
So the painting is all actually done through Skia, the graphics rendering engine that's used in Chrome, Android, Amazon Kindle, Photoshop, and it's what we call to, and that's part of the modularity of Flutter, that we make these generalized calls like, hey, canvas, draw a rectangle. Like, it's funny, the actual call for doing that is pretty much the same as the one that you've just made. But then what that canvas is, most of the time is Skia. It's Skia doing that. If you wanted to bring in your own graphics rendering engine for some reason, you absolutely could. Or I guess that would also be useful for saving the PDF or printing or something like that.
So you work with those primitives?
Yes, the primitives that we have at our disposal come from Skia, since that's a team that Google owns too, that tells us what they support. Now, we do not support 100% of Skia's features, and you can see some bugs. By the way, if anyone's interested in contributing to the engine, I believe there is some good for first-timer bugs around adding in more support for more APIs on Skia, usually adding in one more way to call a method that's not being called. It's not such a hard thing, and maybe a really good way to put in your first pull request. It's not all of them, it's most of them, and we don't actually have total pixel. You can't deal necessarily with every pixel, you can't get down to the OpenGL layer, which is what Skia is built on. You work with the point layer. So we call it points, it's like logical pixels, or DPs, density independent pixels. Pixels the way that designers and developers can think about them across all devices without having to do the math of how dense is the screen of this device and how big is the area that I actually have. Just treat it all as it's all this size. Enough information?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, another one.
Yeah, about the camera plugin.
Yes.
Because the format of the instance of an image is some Y2 format.
I don't have any experience with the camera input. But if you had a concern, I could.
No, I had more of a high-level question.
Oh.
Because I want to have that image and have it translated into a usual format like RGB or something like that.
Huh.
Is there a good way of doing that? Because I found some solutions online, but they don't seem to be working for me.
Unfortunately, not working on the camera plugin, I don't have any experience with that. Certainly, if you felt like it, you could go down to the platform level and do that with platform channels that you wrote yourself as a plugin.
I thought it was more common, so I guess.
No, you're really a trailblazer, doing amazing things with photography.
But you showed this example with the augmented reality, so.
Those are examples from the entire range of apps that are out there, not just the apps that are built with Flutter. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that. Yeah, it was about trying to define design that was custom as a whole.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
There is a huge number of open issues,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be hard to find the right one or even get help.
Yes.
Some of the issues are just duplicates or irrelevant. Do you have any plans to improve the issue situation?
Yes, very good question. So we do have a very large bug count at the moment on GitHub. There are negatives about that. One, oh my God, there's so many bugs. And then the other is, but the positive about it is that it means that people actually are participating and there is a lot of usage and we're getting the feedback that we need in order to make the right choices for people. We know that they're not being closed as quickly as they're being made right now. So that's one of the reasons why we've doubled the size of like my team, so that we can try to get over that hump, at least in material design, so that when we deal with issues, maybe we close more than are opened against it. As far as just triaging the existing ones, we are working with people right now who have started triaging the bugs. They're still just dealing with the incoming flow at this moment and not so much going back through time. But finding the ones, I was talking to somebody out there, like I saw one today that just said, I think it just said like chips, and then inside there was nothing written. You know, like, so that counts for a bug count, but needs to be deleted because there's nothing we can do about it. And then there's also a lot of pull requests right now, a lot of stale pull requests that may not be valid anymore, or pull requests that really need one of us to shepherd them through. That's another one of the reasons why we're expanding all of our teams so that we can do a better job of supporting that. Yes?
You just mentioned OpenGL.
Yes.
So if I have, like, for example, I have a vector-based map and want to use and leverage OpenGL, how?
So as far as I know, we don't have any API for actually getting to OpenGL itself because our APIs deal with abstracted canvas and the canvas is Skia. Skia actually doesn't necessarily deal with OpenGL anymore. It deals with Vulkan or Metal.
Yeah.
But you know, it's all the same as OpenGL. So yeah, that's one of the things that I thought when I first came to the team, that there would be a way to like cut out a window and say I'm doing the OpenGL in there. But it turns out,
bring your own rendering at least for some part of the screen.
yeah, it turns out that that's not a very much requested feature. That a lot of people don't have experience working directly with GPU languages, and that it's very difficult for us to do that when the rendering engine that we're dealing with, Skia, isn't set up for that. Their expectation with the way they built it was that their windows would be just them. So it's an obscure one that's not supported by Skia and difficult for us
How
to
do you
do.
render your maps? Because
do you
actually they
render
are
maps?
vector-based.
I have no idea, but does Philip have a talk on it that gives more information?
Hopefully.
What were the maps that you were using in yours?
We're using TomTom right now, but actually it applies for a lot of different map providers because, like, when you come, like on the old maps you have like tiles, and these are PNGs or whatever, like rendered image you want to paint. But like when it comes to performance, this is like an important part to do so, and like your data is getting huge when you're getting offline. Or what you can do is when you're using vector-based rendering, it's first of all, it's performance, but then you need some kind of graphing units to render these vector information and bringing it up to the custom UI.
Well, I won't speculate because I'm not sure because I've not worked on the Maps plugin. But it is possible to do vector-based rendering through the Dart library directly to Skia. Maybe they're doing that. That'd be a fun. I'm definitely gonna go home and check it out tonight. How they do get the map. Do you know?
No, they are not doing this. They are just embedding the native Google Maps widget in Flutter.
Ah, so it's a plugin. Yeah, it's a platform
So
channel.
it's just using it's using the platform views, right?
Yeah.
So you can also embed platform views that are shown in Flutter.
And you know what? That's a really good backdoor to solving your problem. Because you can bring in, at least I know in iOS, I don't come from Android, so I couldn't say, you can bring in an OpenGL view into iOS and say, this little space is OpenGL and I'm running these files in it.
Yeah.
So even though you would have to do that, of course, both for Android and iOS, you could compose your own app that was made of add to app and had that inside it, or find a way to bring in a plugin that was just getting an OpenGL view, metal view, whatever. Any other questions? All right, well, it was really great meeting all of you tonight. And again, thank you everyone for coming out. It's really exciting to see all the interest in Flutter and also to see that this town that we've invested in has, so much community in it. We're really excited about everything we're going to do here. Email me if you need anything, and also go in Discord if you want to chat with anybody. Yes?
Yeah, I already forgot the email.
The shortcut is, it's just my last name at google.com.
Okay, perfect.
Not at gmail.com. I don't know who that is, but it's at google.com. Yeah. I suppose you could try mailing anybody that you wanted to at google.com. I don't know, it's like Larry at google.com. He's not going to. I don't even know if that's the right address or what the triage process is for his email load.
I'll let you know.
Okay. If I ever see you again. Yeah. All right.